first and foremost, I had to embrace early enough that I was special.
Okay.
Yes, I believe everyone is special, but many just don't know it, and many don't live it.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Candid Convos with me, Chiwete Onyema. Now today my guest is a multi-potentialite, a serial entrepreneur. He's behind the success of numerous businesses. Not just that, he is one of the most sought after keynote speakers in Nigeria. Olushola Olaleye is here with me, the Olushola.
Hi, Chiwete. How you doing, brother?
Thank you so much for coming on to this pod and having a conversation with me today.
It's a pleasure. First and foremost, it's been a while. How you doing?
I'm fine. It's been a long time.
Yeah, a whole lot of people don't know, but we go way back.
I'm telling you, and trust me, what I knew then and what I'm seeing now, I did not see coming.
Really?
Because then you look like the guy who was just going to be on media, doing media stuff and all that. But the things I can take from what I've seen over the years is that you're very inquisitive about stuff generally. You always ask questions.
Absolutely.
I know, but that's good. It's good.
Absolutely.
It's good to see how far you've come.
Absolutely. Thank you, my
So
brother.
let's go back in time a bit with your background. Just give us a little short of your background. Growing up, how was it like for you?
Well, growing up was quite interesting and quite fun. But to respond to that question, I need to understand the aspect of my childhood you're trying to talk about.
Okay, so probably growing up, the setting of probably your parents, were they like middle class, were they rich, were you born with silver spoon, things like that?
I hear with respect to spoons, there's silver spoon, there's golden spoon,
And there's no
there's
spoon.
wooden spoon, and then there's no spoon. To be fair, I think I was born in a relatively silverish spoon.
Okay.
So not silver. I think I was born in terms of socioeconomic strata, I would say upper middle class.
Upper middle class.
Yes,
okay.
my dad was a lawyer, my mom an engineer. I think we had every single thing we needed and many of the things we wanted. Okay. I like to put it that way. We got education, we got the right upbringing, and so many more things. I was a precocious kid. I like to put it that way. A precocious kid is someone who seems to be light years above his age. So I became precocious because I just had a proclivity and, do I say, a knack for gleaning from the wealth of wisdom from elderly people. And so I knew what to do early enough. I knew what not to do early enough. I had inculcated in me certain values that shaped my life and still affect me to this very day. So yes, that's a very vital part of my childhood. And well, I lost my dad when I was 7, and I'd say, as tragic as the experience was, one other thing that it also did was that it imbibed in me a sense of responsibility from early on, because now you knew that every single moment had to count. You probably didn't have the luxury, of time wasting that you probably might have had, where you had maybe a head start, when you had that. Yeah, so more or less, for me, my childhood was pretty interesting. So having had that experience early enough, I grew up in a family of 3, more or less. So my mom, myself, and my brother. But then it took a village to raise me, because my aunts chimed in, my grandparents chimed in, and I think it was really amazing. So we lived in the mainland of Lagos. We commuted between Ijesha. I was born in Ijesha Tedo. I lived in Ijesha growing up. I was born in General Hospital Ikeja, but after a while, right, after my dad's demise, we were supposed to actually move to the island, right? We was exactly what we were supposed to live. But after his demise, we stayed back on the mainland because it was close to my mom's work. And so I kind of had my early years in between Ijesha and Ilasamaja.
Oh.
And then after a while, I moved to Ilupeju, where I actually met you.
Okay, that's how we met, actually.
And that was where
okay,
I
and of course you attended Covenant University.
Yeah,
and finished with graduated at the age of 19. You set a record with that.
I think
you
so.
think don't try to be modest here. Graduated at the age of 19.
So. Yes, I graduated at the age of 19.
Impressive.
Prior to that, I had gone to Baptist Academy of Aninkuru.
Okay,
yeah,
interesting.
I'm a Baptist boy.
So talking about Covenant University now, there's this thing I've noticed, and a few people have talked about it. Looks like you guys always look out for each other. Now, I'm saying that because when you look at the entertainment space or media space, you guys are kind of involved in everything. Talking about you, talking about Baja Debule, talking about SLK, talking about Ima, oh my God, you know. Was it intentional? Exactly. So do you guys have this thing about once it's a Covenant person, oh, I'm going to help you? Or did that help in any way?
To be honest, the sentiments are there.
Okay.
With respect to the fact that every Covenant University graduate is called an eagle, right?
Okay.
And being an eagle represents so many things to us, more than just graduating from a university. First and foremost, it means that pretty much every one of us is cut from the same cloth. What that means is that we've had for 4 or 5 years certain values inculcated in us, certain potentials nurtured, and it just kind of gives you some sense of collective consciousness that, oh, we went through this together, we knew this together, we're all Omo Papa, you know, and stuff like that. And one of the things that stands Covenant University out, I would say, is that its results cancel insults. What that means is that when you see a typical Covenant University graduate, a lot of things stand out. And one of those principal things is excellence. We pretty much are excellent at many of the things we do because we were forged in a system of excellence. One that is in sharp variance with what is obtainable in the Nigerian climb. So you must understand. Imagine going to a university where there was no strike. Going to a university where exam dates were not moved. Going to a university where there was a working system. Going to a university that more or less, quote and unquote, looked like it had its own independent economy. Now, early enough, these things proved to be mirrors of possibilities to us. It's what we were seeing every day. It showed us it was possible. One of the core values of Covenant University is possibility mentality. And so the average Covenant University graduate leaves those 4 walls with the impression that I can do anything I set up my heart to do. And so when we leave school and we see each other in whatever industry that we find ourselves, there's this, oh man, oh my guy, you know, and excellence is also contagious, right? And so when you see someone who exudes the same juice that you exude, obviously you gravitate towards the person. And
nice one. I mean, you literally just did some sort of adverts for Covenant
University. You
can
say that again.
And also, I'm sure Federal University students will be like, what's talking about?
Let me let the beef.
So let's go straight into you now. Tell me about the first product you ever sold.
Woo! First product I ever sold myself.
Okay. I was expecting that, but it's fine.
I sold myself.
Okay.
From when I was a child, I'd always been selling myself.
How was it like?
I first and foremost, I had to embrace early enough that I was special.
Okay.
Yes. I believe everyone is special, but many just don't know it, and many don't live it. And so, right from when I was young, from when I was 4, 5, 6, 7, I always sold myself to people in every single conversation. Every single time I show up, I always sell myself to people. At the age of 9, I think, 8, when I was in primary school, I remember selling myself to become the head boy in school. You know, and then I became head boy at 8, graduated primary school at 9, got into secondary school, kept on selling myself. But then with respect to tangibles now, what was the first product I ever sold? I once sold a wristwatch to a friend.
A wristwatch?
Yes, to a friend.
Okay.
I had bought the wristwatch for, I think, 1,200 or 1,500 because I knew my way around the market. And then I get to school, the guy likes it, and he goes, how much should I pay for that? Now, basic negotiation rule, try not to call the first price.
Okay.
And I refuse not to. And then the guy looks me in the eye and says, you know what? Okay, how about I pay you 9,000? Now, he had no idea how much I bought it, was willing to pay 9,000. Now, I have an extremely, extremely high moral compass, which means that for me, there's some kind of profit that I feel is way too much for me to make.
Okay.
However, in this case,
Yeah.
I loved the watch, and it was a case of demand meeting supply. The guy wanted to part with all the money he had in his hands, or any amount he could part with, just to get
that watch.
the watch that I had bought. Now, I didn't have to tell him how much I bought it, but then I was selling it to him for 9,000 naira.
So he paid 9,000 naira.
He paid 9K. He paid 9K for it. I think I bought it like 1.5 or 2K. Can't remember. He paid 9K, and then it just showed me that one of the major things that actually drives sales or drive prices is not just necessarily how much it costs to make the product, but money gravitates towards the direction of availability and how fast you can solve a problem. The guy never had a watch. He wanted a watch. He saw this particular one and wanted it. Now, he didn't just want it. He wanted it immediately. So it would have been a different ball game if I went to get for him, and obviously the price would have been reduced. So I did that. And after a while, I sold gala and drinks in school for a bit. Then when I did that, I went to my youth service, which was a very interesting part of my life, by the way, and where I also sold toast bread.
Okay, so how about the first crowd you addressed?
All right. So first crowd I ever addressed, I'd always been a sucker for things like literary and debate societies.
Okay.
I'd always been quite an articulate kid. I'd always had some good elocution early enough. In fact, I was taught to be a lawyer when I was younger. They said, "Oh, you're going to be a lawyer," and stuff like that. I like to talk. I was a bit of a talkative kid. But first crowd I ever addressed officially, can't remember, but I know that probably addressing the assembly as head boy at the age of 9, probably.
I was expecting you to say that.
Yeah, probably.
But then again, okay, so let's move into, I mean, you're entrepreneur and you've dealt with, you've seen things, you've seen the business landscape, especially in Nigeria. What would you say is one of the things that young entrepreneurs get wrong in Nigeria?
Ooh. How long do we have?
A few things. No, we can just pick on like maybe 2 or 3.
How long do we have? Is if I start to talk. Well, first and foremost, I'd say we all get things wrong. And I must be very clear. The goal is not how wrong you are. The goal is to recognize your wrongs early enough, fail forward, and transform failures into successes. Failure is an inevitable part of the success journey. And so being wrong shouldn't make you feel bad. So we will always get things wrong. What matters the most is your response to being wrong. Okay. Now, with respect to the Nigerian context, what would I say Nigerian entrepreneurs get wrong, particularly young ones? I'll say a lack of desire to delay gratification. A whole lot of us want to start businesses now and benefit from the businesses immediately. I think many of us are actually very attracted to the success stories of accomplished entrepreneurs. Many of us are attracted to their results and we pay no attention to their processes. When you see a Jeff Bezos, behind that monumental success is about 30 years of failing and succeeding, falling and rising again. And I can say same for every tycoon in Nigeria. So one of the things that I feel that we get wrong is that there's a false sense of what entrepreneurship really is. Now, for context, entrepreneurship is a game where way more people fail than succeed. In fact, for context, about 96% of entrepreneurs fail within the first 10 years of their enterprise, which simply means just 4 out of every 100 will be standing in 10 years. So first and foremost, the odds are stacked against you. And then my question is, what were you expecting? Were you expecting it to be all rosy? Were you expecting to start immediately and start yielding results all of a sudden? And so with the context of delayed gratification, it's that many times a whole lot of us see some semblance of success and then want to start feeding off that semblance of success, whereas you do not know that that semblance of success is actually a seed that has to be replanted to germinate in the future. So that's one of the major things I would say many entrepreneurs get wrong. How ready are you willing, or how willing rather, are you to delay gratification. When you make your first million in profit, for example, what do you do with it? Do you go and opt for a bone straight, or do you bone straight and focus on your business?
Okay, I like that one. So this now brings me to the next question, which is there is this.
Okay, I'll give you just one. So that's
give me one. And let's just stick to one for now. But I think that's actually very key to the conversation, because, like you said, with social media nowadays, people always want want to show you how successful they are, as opposed to letting you know how long it took them to get it. But this now brings me to the next question, which is people think that probably rich kids have an advantage over kids who are not so rich, especially when it comes to businesses. So there's this belief that if you're a rich kid, if you're a rich kid who turns to be an entrepreneur, it's easier for you than myself, for example, if I'm not from a rich family.
Let's be clear.
Okay.
This conversation is still one that has erupted into an age-long debate. I mean, for so many years. Now, I'll be honest, you do get a head start if you're from a privileged background, particularly if you're an entrepreneur. Dangote is proof of this. He said stuff like his uncle borrowed him 500,000 several years ago to start his business. 500K then is like 50 million now, and that's facts.
Yeah.
However, if all there is to building a successful entrepreneurial enterprise is for you to be from a privileged background, then every single rich kid will be business tycoons today. So on one hand, you have to acknowledge that privilege helps make the journey a little bit smoother. However, privilege cannot fast track some aspects of the process. Privilege cannot instill in you the indefatigableness to keep going when the chips are down. Privilege cannot teach you business. In fact, if privilege gets into the wrong hands, the privilege can be lost. So here's my point. Privilege helps provide probably the initial funding or the capital for you to move, or probably educates you with the given level of exposure or experience, quote and unquote, that you might need. I mean, exposure maybe into a client. For example, if your father is wealthy enough to send you to New York, and you could take a stroll to Manhattan, see what Wall Street looks like, do this, do that, and everything. Or you could take a trip to Singapore and do all manner, and that's amazing. However, no matter the exposure you get, no matter what you know, until you are ready for the painstaking execution required to make things happen and be successful, nothing will happen and nothing will fall to your ground. Now, on the other part of the spectrum, for some people who have the grit, the gusto, the energy, the drive, and maybe some form of knowledge about how things work, but are lacking funding, there's also a problem. So I think a perfect scenario will be to balance out utilizing your vantage point, which could be a privileged position, and also growing in grit, energy, determination needed. But I'll put it this way. There's a popular saying that weak men create what? Tough times. Yeah. Tough times create strong men, and strong men create great times, and then great times create weak men. And that the cycle keeps on going like that. So, which simply means that being in a privileged position is just one part, right? But also, one thing I've noticed, people might beg to disagree, is that sustaining wealth is a different ball game from building wealth. It's a different ball game from building wealth. So there's a whole lot I can say on this conversation, but does it make it easier? It does. Absolutely make it easier if you're from a privileged background.
So for people who, because there's this, I don't want to use the word disrespect, but when there's a conversation about making it from, because we like that story.
Everyone likes
from the grass to grace story. Mm-hmm. When someone who comes from a privileged home says that, they're like, "Oh, you come on, you don't know what you're talking about."
Oh, they're joking. For example, one of the most disrespected Africans is Davido.
Yeah.
With all due respect, that guy is an embodiment, professionally.
Yes.
Speaking strictly on his discography, right? That guy is an embodiment of not relenting because you are from a privileged background. He's a hard worker. A tireless. First and foremost, when you try to downplay people's success journeys because they come from privileged positions, it reeks of bitterness. Because you must understand what's at play here. If now note, particularly with Davido in mind. If you try to say the reason he's successful is because his father was wealthy, quick question: how many wealthy people's children have tried venturing into music and failed? Are you aware it's actually the anomaly? Because so many of them have tried in the past but never got anything going. Which simply means you have to give this young man his credit one way or another. And so, yes, did his father's money help expose him early enough to the right corridors, give him the right channels, help him with the story? Yes. However, there's still no reason for you to downplay his effort. Can I tell you something? Where Davido is today is actually 95% his indefatigableness, his determination, his energy, his refusal to back down even when things are not going great, than it is of his father's money. Can his father's money buy him the grit when the chips are down? Can his father's money, quote and unquote, even give him the voice? Call his voice anything you want to call it, right? His father's money just gave him the exposure or put him into the right rooms. What you do in those rooms is up to you. And that's the truth.
All right.
In fact, can I say one more thing?
Yeah, please.
Him being from a wealthy background is actually reason enough for him not to work hard. If he wanted to. But the fact that he's still moving tirelessly goes to show you that there's something he's made of. There's something very formidable in his character that is worthy of emulation. The fact that he has a lot of things to fall back on and he has many excuses not to keep on pushing, but still decided to.
All right, let's move over now to this conversation because you made a video about it, and it's something that has been happening for quite some time. This fake it till you make it, argument. And it's because a lot of people are saying, okay, should you live a fake life till you get to the point where people now think that is your reality?
Okay.
They say, okay, you've shown that you're worthy to be on this table, this higher table in quotes, because you've said it that you cannot commit a particular amount of money to someone if the person has not shown that they can handle it.
Yeah.
Right? So what's your take on people who, on the concept of faking it till you make it? Do you think people should they stretch themselves way beyond their means just to get to where they want to get to?
All right. So first and foremost, like with every other conversation, balance is key. And it's one thing for you to get a good advice, another thing for you to narrow it down to your context. Context is king. So, for example, I once did a video about how several years ago, one of my very wealthy friends, probably one of my richest friends, came to my house. Is a CEO of, a very high value startup. And he came to my house, and in the midst of our conversation, this is about 4 years ago, he was telling me how, his phone is on DND, or his phone has always been on DND for the past 2 years at the time. And I go, oh my God, this is exactly what I need right now. And then I had to pinch myself like, you can't compare yourself to him. A large part of your business's operations, Olushola, at this particular point, still goes around you. So keeping your phone on DND means you're losing customers. But then again, the advice he gave about putting his phone on DND, is it a good one or not? At least to help ease anxiety and stress. It was.
Okay.
But does that flow and work with my context at that time? Absolutely not. Maybe now I can put my phone on DND because I did not put it on DND then. If I put it on DND then, I will have almost no life or no money to float my career with. Are you getting where I'm coming from?
Yeah.
Now, how do I narrow this down to this particular fake life conversation? Now, the very first thing is you have to define what fake life is. Here's what I believe fake life is.
Okay.
Fake life is creating a package when there is no content.
Okay.
I'll put it this way. Fake life is amplifying a container when there is no content. Fake life is going on a shelf and picking out a product with a very nice wrapper, but opening it and it's absolutely nothing on the inside. However, packaging is amplifying a container to ensure that people will find the content appealing enough. Let me explain what this means. Okay. When you go to a supermarket, no matter how amazing a product looks, or no matter how much you've heard about some, let me give you the very simple explanation to ensure this dies. This drives the point home. When you get into a supermarket, for example, let's say you have never been in contact or never heard of any of the products on the shelf, right? What do? Do you select by any, mini, money, mo, or you go to the wrapper or the container that looks the most attractive?
Well, that's very important. Of course, you're going to go to the product that looks attractive.
Quick question, I like that. Now, here's one of the things we do that are wrong.
Okay.
A whole lot of us with amazing content on our inside, who have worked on ourselves, have built high profiles, are intelligent enough, have done all manner, are doing amazing and everything and all. Yeah. A lot of us seem to make statements like, if my helper wants to locate me, he will locate me. Right?
Okay.
Or make statements like, my content is proof enough and lure enough to bring the right people my way. But that's never the case, because men always look on the outward, right? While it's only God who always looks what? On the inside. So now here's the balance. The balance is simple. When you hear statements like fake it until you make it, I always want to understand exactly what you mean. If faking it until you make it means that you try to act like who you are not to get the attention of people, then that is faking it till you make it. Packaging, on the other hand, is amplifying who you are to get into the right networks.
So if you're saying someone is going for a bidding now and he has to borrow a car,
now these are semantics. It is not fake life. I'll explain exactly what this means.
Okay.
Look, you said he's going for a bidding.
Yes.
And then he borrows a car. Quick question. Before you borrow the car, I have to ask many questions.
Okay.
Number one, what type of car is it? And how much of a deviation is the lifestyle you are trying to project from what your current lifestyle is? If, for example, you drive a Highlander and you decide to borrow a Toyota Land Cruiser.
You don't have a car at all.
You don't have a car at all.
Yes.
It depends. What kind of car is he borrowing? If you don't have a car at all and you're borrowing a Mercedes-Benz S-Class, there's a problem. Let me explain. See, this thing, the lines sometimes could be blurred, particularly if you do not watch it. You must ask yourself the question, what is the goal? Let me give an example. If you do not have a car, I would advise you probably get a nice Uber or ask a friend of yours who has a nice clean car and borrow it and take it. But then when you start going to rent a car, for example, of 200,000 naira per day to get a 5 million contract, there's a bit of an issue. So here's the point. When you're trying to package, try not to over-project your current worth. Are you getting what I'm saying? So the balance many times, so someone commented and said, oh, Olushola, what do you mean? Are you trying to say that, hold on, watch this. If I'm going for a contract or I'm going for an event, Uber cost is expensive, blah, 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 blah. And I said, look, if you value the contract you're going to pursue enough, you will do well not to show up with downfall sweats. Are you getting where I'm coming from?
So now,
is a special here's my point. The little steps you take to ensure that you look more presentable can't be called fake life. Fake life is when you consistently try to punch above your weight to make sure that you look a way that you absolutely do not. Are you getting what I'm saying? Yeah, so borrowing a car for a bidding, I don't think there's anything bad in that. But the question is, what kind of car are you borrowing? And how much of a gap is the reality you are projecting to your actual reality? Are you getting what I'm saying?
Yeah, I get
you. There's a lot of things in between. So for example, when I talk, this is what I always tell people. When I'm talking about packaging, here's what I'm preaching.
Yeah.
I'm preaching paying attention to the container to ensure that the content gets an opportunity to reveal itself. So for example, you haven't focusing on the wrong things. I believe so strongly that when you're talking about packaging, things as little as the body spray you use, the perfume you wear, the clothes you wear, and many times how you communicate are even more important aspects. Are you getting my point?
Yeah.
Than even if you show up in a Benz as against a Camry, for example. Are you getting what I'm saying?
Yeah. So there's this conversation I hear a lot with people where they say things like, they want to be entrepreneurs only because they do not want to answer to someone.
I think that's a very silly thing to say.
You
You might
hear things like, "I want to be
say,
my own
you
boss."
might say, you want to be an entrepreneur because you don't want to answer to someone. But can I tell you something?
Yeah.
As an entrepreneur, you have to answer to your business all your life.
But wouldn't that be on your own terms?
No, not on your own terms. You see, that's part of what I'm saying.
Okay.
No one builds a profitable business that transcends decades. No one builds a business that stands the test of time by answering to themselves.
All right, so with that, we're done with today's episode of Candid Convos with Chiwete. I'll see you some other time. Bye.
But can I tell you something?
Yeah.
As an entrepreneur, you have to answer to your business all your life.